Good morning and welcome to the second podcast for PatientGroups.co. And today, really excited to welcome Victoria. And we're speaking with someone whose courage has reshaped the landscape for supporting people living with complex regional pain syndrome. And Victoria founded Burning Nights CRPS, and it's turned one of the most challenging experiences she's had in her personal life into a source of support for the community and advocacy, really establishing hope for others living with CRPS. And in this conversation today, we're planning to explore her journey with CRPS and the moments that really changed everything for Victoria, and the drive behind creating one of the UK's leading CRPS charities. And we are so interested to learn how that went and how you sort of went about creating that. But to start off, we'd love to have you introduce yourself, Victoria, and also, obviously, again, thank you for being here. And if we start the conversation by initially understanding, before CRPS entered your life, what did day-to-day life look like for you?
So thank you for having me on here. It's great to be able to talk to you today. Day-to-day life was pretty regular, so up at 7, wash my hair, nothing major, but go to work. I was a trained barrister, so I'd just finished all my legal training and I was getting some legal experience, but decided I wanted to get life experience as well. So day-to-day life was off to work, teaching 16 to 18-year-olds the rudimentaries of the law, which is not always the best, especially when your mobile phone keeps going off. But we did it, and I loved doing it. So that was, during the day, came home, had the husband, and we had big plans. But every day was just a normal day.
And then came the injury. Can you take us back to that moment and tell us what happened and how you dealt with?
So I had just changed my job. I was a lecturer in a different further education college, again teaching law, but it was in the middle of the winter and I had only been there 2 months. I would finish work for the day, 4:30, ready to go home, and went down two flights of stairs. I hit the second flight of stairs and saw they were wet, full of leaves, bottles. It's a college, so you've got 16-year-olds there. But I held onto the rail. I don't remember the 30 steps going down, but the next minute I saw the floor coming up to see me, and I was on the floor. I was more embarrassed about the student behind me, because he was a member of my class, and I was worried that he'd just seen his teacher fall down the stairs. So it was more of a case of quickly got up, didn't think, gathered everything up and got to the car. I sat in the car and I burst into tears, and the pain was just something else. And that was the start of the journey, that big pain experience. I was a hockey player, so I knew what pain was like, but this was not the same.
CRPS is often described as one of the most painful conditions a person can experience, but statistics don't capture the human reality of it. Can you sort of take us through that as well, please?
So, like I say, I was a hockey player, so I knew what an injury was like, I knew what pain was like, but this was something that I'd never experienced before. It was so not just painful, it was burning, it was stabbing, it was so in your face that I just didn't know what to do. It was just that, not just the pain and the swelling, but then I'd get other symptoms that would just randomly appear that I wasn't really expecting. But the pain, I was feeling sick with it constantly. I couldn't eat properly because I was constantly feeling this pain and this burning sensation. And the leg just was going bright red all the time. And then, like I say, swelling and other changes started to appear.
Is it localized? Is it all over? Is it like you said, shooting, stabbing, like almost every kind of pain you can imagine. What, is it localized?
For me, it was. It started in the middle of my shin, but within about the first 2 months, it already almost like radiated to the tip of my toes, and then above my knee to about mid thigh level. And it was basically the whole of the leg, really, in the end. But right at the very beginning, that pain, with that shooting pain and the stabbing and the burning, it just felt like I was in a vat of oil or being stabbed with ice picks. And that's kind of how I think about it.
It's must have been incredibly confusing at the time, because you are not quite sure what's going on. Yes, you get pain from an injury, but not like that. We've sort of in our research we've figured out that people are being struggled to be believed about this pain that they're getting. Is that the sort of experience you've had as well?
It definitely was. I was told on multiple occasions that they can't see anything. It's got to be something. Are you sure it's not being manifested in your head? I was told by one consultant. Another said, go and see a psychiatrist. And then another said, well, you're a woman, you should be able to handle this type of pain. Women have children, don't you? And at that point, I really, to be honest, I started questioning myself. I really did start questioning it. Is it me? Am I actually seeing this? Am I making it up? Because I'd seen so many different people saying virtually the same thing. And sadly, I'm hearing it today. And that's what's scary.
Even after all this time, because it's not people recognize it now. There's more sort of information around. You've got Google, you've got your agency, which we'll talk about, your advocacy group, which we'll talk about in a second. But at what point did you realize that you need to kind of channel your experience of this into helping others via whatever means you kind of found at the time?
So right at the beginning, I wasn't in any fit state to help anyone. It took me 7 months and 39 doctors and specialists to get an answer of why I was in so much pain and why all these things are appearing. And the first few years were not pleasant. I went through an above knee amputation. I went through a revision surgery and then multiple pneumonias. And it wasn't until I was faced with a second amputation that I thought, no, I need to do something about this, because nobody can go through all of that I've gone through. Nobody can do that again. And I wanted to stop that. And that's how I started Burning Nights.
I guess, Victoria, the name Burning Nights, tell me a little bit about that.
So for me, at the very beginning, the pain was worse at night. Now I know a little bit more about pain and distractions and things like that you have during the day. But for me, it burnt worst at night, and it seemed to be radiating more, as if it had its own little pulse on its own. And when I came to thinking, what am I going to do about CRPS, I thought, well, it's got to have a name. And I wanted it to be distinct, but also something that patients could recognise. And definitely those in our community know what Burning Nights is and are as a charity, but it is definitely something for me that it was definitely worse at night. Gradually things have changed. I've learned a lot more techniques, but still I can get worse at night. But that's how it all came about, because it was more painful.
Yeah, and actually we often hear that as well, where actually when you're alone at night, that's when you feel most, not only pain but all the other health conditions and anxiety and concerns, because it's just you and your thoughts, and it can really escalate. So I can definitely see the link with the name and where you decided to go that way. Was there a specific moment, apart from what you mentioned before, where you like, this has to stop now and something has to be done, where you felt, where the idea essentially came from with Burning Nights? Because it's quite quite a big organisation and charity that's now developed. So I mean, it'd be great to learn your process to there and where you are now, that journey. What did that look like?
So when I was faced with losing my second leg due to CRPS, we're talking 12 years ago now, I actually didn't know whether I would survive. I think that's one thing that I really, and I started it before the amputation, 6 months before, and I didn't even think to be a charity. It was just an information site. It was a website that had good, solid, evidence-based information that people could trust and also understand, because there wasn't really anything. In fact, there wasn't anything back 2014. Certainly not in the UK. In America, yeah, there was the organisation in the States, but in the UK there wasn't anything, and nothing that you'd say, well, go and see them. They've got information. And when I had my amputation, and like I say, I didn't think I was going to survive, and it almost was, well, at least I've started something. Someone else can finish it, even if I don't survive. Poor husband had to go through all of that, and I did come out. Obviously, did come out at the other end, but it was then after that I thought, no, really, let's get more information on there. Let's see what else we can do. And I didn't realise how needed it was until probably earlier the following year after amputation. And it was a case of, well, people are asking for help. People are asking for support. Why can't I give it to them? And then we started taking on volunteers, and social media took off. And that's how I started, was the website and social media, nothing else. There was nothing. And then within a year, we then started on the road to becoming a charity. But I hadn't realised how big we were going to get. I thought rare disease is going to be tiny. But now we support around 5,000 each year, individuals. During COVID, we hit 9,000 people during that year we supported. So yeah, I hadn't realised how big it was going to be.
Were you quite surprised on the number of people with CRPS that are out there that don't have support when you started seeing those numbers?
Definitely. When I was first diagnosed, I was told, well, you're probably going to be not meeting anyone that have got your condition. Okay, thank you very much. So how many people have it? No idea, was the answer I got. And you did, and I did. I felt really on my own, even back at the very beginning, there was no one there to help. There was MSN, there wasn't even Facebook. That's how, I know I'm showing my age now. That's how long ago it was. But I was really shocked as to when all these people started appearing, literally from almost like it was nowhere, to where we are now. But gradually each year, more people talk about it, more people use our services, then they tell someone else. But it's also the families as well. And that's something I've always said from very, very beginning. We have to not just support those living with the condition, it's their families as well. They're equally affected, just in a different way. And that's the difference.
No, I agree. And would you say that the span of CRPS in terms of it not just being adults or older people or women, like you mentioned before, where have you picked up on the type demographics since you've started the charity as well, in terms of the diversity of people?
Yeah, we are still getting a lot more females that are coming through, but we are now seeing men come through, and it's nice to see that they are asking for help, because there is still, for some, the very machistic view of, well, I can handle it, and we need to break that down a bit, but there are still so many that we are not getting to, the underserved, the underrepresented, and the next project will be looking, how can we help people in different communities that can't access our services currently. But yeah, there's definitely, for us, at very beginning was just mainly women, very odd men, and then now we're starting to get a few more come through.
And adolescents and young people, you're seeing that as well, aren't you, in charity?
We are. It didn't really start. We didn't start seeing it for the first maybe year, 2 years, and then we started getting people or parents, I should say, or guardians asking, "Do you support people under 18?" And I suppose it wasn't that I never thought about it. It was that it was like an aha moment. Well, we should be doing it. If it can affect people over 18, it's got to be able to affect under 18s. It might be a smaller number, but we still need to support them. And that's one of the reasons why we have the counselling service that offers from the age of 5. And I think it's important that we do keep doing that. You know, the Facebook group for parents, for example, that still exists. That's got 1,500 members on it. So there's the small things that we're doing. I just think we need to do a bit more. But then I would always say that.
I was just about to ask what sort of services do you offer support wise, and then you just listed them out. So I was like, yes, maybe you need to do more from your own point of view, but it sounds like you're doing a lot already, to be fair. What's the kind of the thing about Burning Nights that makes you most proud, or the service that you've created that's the most prideful? What do you've obviously you're very proud of the service, but what makes you most proud?
Yeah, we've got a lot of services. I think we've got 11 at the last count. I suppose because Samira's here, I've got to say the counselling service. But I am actually proud of both the counselling service and the befriending services for 2 different reasons. The befriending service is definitely not therapy. It's someone like me on the end of a phone, and I wish I'd had that 20 years ago when I was first diagnosed. And that, for many people, is an absolute lifeline. Could be the only call they get in a week, you know. And we have people that go through the service and then they come back again in 6 months, and that's fine, because if that's what they need for support, that's fine by me. And we've got all lived experience, those with living and lived experience of CRPS, and that makes the difference for that. And then the counselling service, we actually started that as a trial during COVID, because we'd seen a 38% increase in suicidal related calls during COVID, that we said, surely we've got to be able to do something else. And we put an advert out for a counsellor, and someone local actually turned up who had neuropathic pain, so she understood from a lived experience. And we said, well, we'll just do it for 6 months. Just do that one therapist for 6 months. That's 5 years ago now. And that one therapist has turned 15, 16 therapists, 5 supervisors, and a clinical lead, Samira. So
full circle.
Full circle, exactly. Yeah.
What would you say, running Burning Nights, how's that like shaped your journey with CRPS? Because obviously you now almost flip the coin a little bit, because you're not only living with it, but you're also supporting, but you're also creating an organisation that's like regional, national, like UK Pacific, but also you're not UK Pacific though, are you? You're global, but essentially you're the only, I would say, the only charity that supports people from that therapy perspective, but all the services that you provide. How has that shaped your condition living with now with CRPS? Is it changed, or is it still the same?
I've had to learn a lot of extra techniques of being able to get up every single day and fight for everyone else, and go to bed at ridiculous o'clock, and still worry about where I'm going to get the funding from every day. So I've had to learn a lot about me, and what my limitations are, but also how I can get through every day, living with a condition and supporting everyone else and finding funding and then running an organisation. So yeah, it's a lot, but I don't think I would change it for anything. I think I'm glad that I was a barrister, so advocacy was my bread and butter, was my job. In a way, I'm glad that I've done that, because that has helped where I can help now. But I've definitely had to learn a lot of extra techniques apart from the medication and my usual breath work and everything and the mindfulness, but what else I can do for me, and taking self-care days and not working on a Friday, things like that, because I work every other day of the week. So yeah, a lot has changed, I think. 20 years ago, I don't think I'd see myself doing what I do now. I didn't think I was going to be here, to be fair, because there was a lot of times that I was not ready to be here, certainly in the early stages. And when I was facing amputation, I thought, how am I going to survive with this? Then I lost loads of the second one. I'm thinking, how can I live without prosthetics, in a wheelchair? Yeah, I didn't think it was possible. But now I would never change what I've done. Never.
It sounds like career-wise, you would have always been in a career that kind of helped people, being in the sort of legal area firstly, teaching area secondly, and then circumstances changed, but your personality shines through and ended up helping people, which is absolutely amazing. Like, it's kind of maybe not the perfect circumstances, but you probably would have done it anyway. And I kind of love that. That's such a nice thing to hear.
Yeah, my area of law was family law. So it was divorce, it was children, it was supporting families. So yeah, you are absolutely 100% on. I would have done something to support someone, whether that would be through law, through guidance, through school and university and colleges, or what I do now. But I love what I do now. I wouldn't change it.
Let's ask the sort of next question. If someone newly diagnosed comes to you, what would you want them to hear, to know? What's the first thing that you do tell people? You've obviously got a lot of experience of helping people, so give us a sort of an understanding of that side.
So we always say that there is hope and there is life after a diagnosis. May not seem it at first, and it may be really a very difficult journey to navigate. But we always say every day celebrate the small win, whatever that may be, whether you got up, whether you brushed your hair, whether you changed your clothes. It doesn't matter, because everyone's achievements are different. And I would always say that learn about your condition, because you're going to need to know about it, sadly, in the rare disease area. Have someone there for support. If you've got a supportive network, great. If you haven't, that's where we come in. We'll support you. And know that there are people out there other than you. Because you do feel, like I said before, you do feel you're on your own. And you do feel that I'm never going to meet anyone else. And that's kind of the first thing we hear from patients. They always ask the same question when they first come on the phone. Do you have CRPS? And if I've answered the phone, obviously the answer is yes. And you can hear an almost massive sigh of relief. And it's, oh, wow, she understands exactly what I'm going to, And the same with the support groups. We say the same thing. Don't need cameras on, don't need mics on. If you don't want to ask anything, you just want to sit and listen, fine. Not a problem to us. And gradually what we see is people start getting braver and more strength in them as time goes on. But each journey is an individual journey. And how they progress through that journey is going to be different each and every time. So we always kind of start with let's give them hope, let's give the range of services that we have, but also the range of treatments and management options that are out there and how to get there. Sometimes we have to repeat it over and over again. Fine, doesn't matter. Sometimes we only say it once and it sticks, but everyone's an individual, very much so. But that's what we always say. There is definite life after diagnosis. I know that.
Yeah, for sure. I know you mentioned earlier as well, like when you were diagnosed, they said to you, just deal with the pain. Obviously, the healthcare professionals, maybe not out of malice, probably out of ignorance, didn't understand the system at all. You've been going for a long time now, which means you've been sort of advocating, banging the drum. What would you now say to the healthcare professionals that maybe do understand it but not well enough, or need to understand it better, or actually maybe give us some background in how well they do understand it now? That would be a good thing.
Yeah, so 12 years ago when we started, or even 10 years ago when we became a charity, healthcare really didn't understand about CRPS. You'd meet the odd one that did, or they'd say they did, but actually when you actually delved a bit deeper, they really didn't. But to be fair, in the last 10 years, I have seen a difference. We now see and hear healthcare saying, yeah, I know, I've got a patient with that, or yeah, I've heard about that. It's X, Y, and Z. So we are seeing a difference. No matter how many times I do bang my drum, and they do get sick of it, I'm sure. But I want more healthcare to know. It's not enough just to know what it is. You need to know more. You need to know, how it affects patients and families. You need to know what treatments there are available. And that's why we always say, come and speak to us. We've got training that we do with healthcare all the time. But communication is something that needs to definitely improve, I think. Things are changing, but the way the condition is portrayed to patients is often not always the best. Telling patients you're going to be fine after 2 years, it's not always going to be the case, and to me that's a false hope, because we've had patients come to us and say, well, it's my 2-year anniversary today, and they're expecting by tomorrow that it's gone, and that's not fair, and it's not fair on those patients, because when tomorrow comes and it's still the same, they then start saying, well, is it me? Have I done something? What have I done wrong? What didn't I do? And then they start blaming themselves, and then the depression comes, the anxiety comes, PTSD, and then you think we've got to unravel all of that all again. So communication is something that I think needs to be improved amongst healthcare. But overall, as CRPS goes, we are improving, but there's still a lot more that could be done, a lot more.
We hear it often with different patient groups as well. So yeah, I completely understand that. You mentioned earlier about how you deal with it. Last question from me, but you mentioned sort of how you deal with it through mindfulness, through breathing, etc. You also mentioned kind of, the drugs, the medicine that take. We work with sort of pharmaceutical companies, and we may or may not have some executives watching. What would you say in the sort of the industry side of things? Obviously, the healthcare side is about the direct contact with patients. What would you say to the pharmaceutical industry about this? Is there something, if you could say to them, you would, and what would that be?
I think it would be nice if we could get specific CRPS drugs, or a drug that could help, or a medicine that could help. Yes, there are a lot of medicines out there now, but with a lot of the guidelines, a lot of patients are having them withdrawn, and that's not always the best. Things like lidocaine, for example, we've got patients that have been on it 20 years, and they're now having those patches withdrawn because of cost, because it's blacklisted, it's do not prescribe. So it's, can industry work with policymakers and advocacy groups like us and say, look, can we do something between us so we're all supporting the person at the end of this, who is the patient, you know. And that's where a lot of this goes missing, because some are not talking to advocacy groups that have got direct links to patients. And if I could ask one thing, is get more patients involved who understand the journey, and families, you know, whether the carers as well. We know what the journey's like. We know the various routes that it can go. But if there could be one drug, that would be amazing. I know that might never happen in my lifetime, but you never know if we can sow the seed now. But get patients involved in research. Don't just be a tick box. You know, involve founders like me, like the last gentleman in your previous podcast, that understand the journey, the knowledge of the community as well, and what is actually happening. Because what is supposed to happen is not always what actually happens, you know, with drugs being withdrawn, you know, and without tapering and things like that. That's probably not what industry expected from their medication at that point. You know, but if it's working for a patient, and that goes to policymakers, if it's working for a patient, then why not? Why can't we have it? I understand about cost, but in the rare disease space, we're not talking about millions of people. We're only talking about thousands or hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands. We're not talking millions. So the cost is surely going to outweigh anything, you know, the benefits have got to outweigh the costs. And I know patients are expecting, you know, their medication at the end of the month, lidocaine patches, whatever it may be. If it's working, don't stop them just because of cost.
No, and absolutely, and I think it's so powerful that you mentioned that, because I think in pain in particular, there's there's so much diversity in what could be offered to people, and that's where often people living with CRPS get confused, and pain in general, because no one knows what's out there or how it can be benefit them, because there isn't any set, I guess, medication that you've mentioned as well. I mean, Victoria, thank you so much for sharing your story, and with such, I mean, there's so much honesty there. You can definitely see where your drive has come from, and the uniqueness of your story being that you lived it, and now you're supporting and providing strength to others who also have CRPS. So for those listening, if you or someone you know is living with or has been affected by CRPS, and there is support out there, as Victoria's mentioned, there's Burning Nights charity that is available for you to access, where there's befriending services and therapy services that you can access as well. And every day the hope is to be able to support more and more people. But if there's any final thoughts from you, Victoria, before we sign off?
Don't forget, you're not alone. I think we need to really reiterate that. Obviously, a thank you to both of you for giving CRPS the platform. But please know that you're not alone. We are here to help. We have got lived experience, and just stay positive.